No war in the past has ever been won by high-tech attack of drones, missile, and rockets. Ultimate victory is achieved by the foot soldiers on the ground.
Iran has been refraining itself to be in a direct conflict. It's been doing a lot of proxies.
Yes, Iran has got its proxies, Iran has got its allies, Iran has supported what it calls resistance groups. That it is not a secret at all that both Israel and the US and others have tried their best to see, even in the past, how Iran's nuclear installations could be taken out.
Palestine has been on the world map prior to existence of Israel.
Israel in the month of July has passed a resolution in its parliament rejecting a two-state solution.
So if Israel has to attack the oil refineries of Iran, what would be the next scenario then, sir, according to you?
The whole world economy will be in a jeopardy. It will no longer remain a localized conflict. Oil prices, big red line for the entire world economy. Whenever Iran has been under threat as a nation, the people have generally rallied around the regime.
What about scenario of the nuclear infrastructure being attacked by Israel? Today we'll be discussing the escalation in West Asia and unpack Israel-Iran conflict. We are joined by two esteemed military minds with deep insights into this region. Lieutenant General Rameshwar Roy, a former Director General of Assam Rifles, and Colonel Rajeev Agarwal, an expert on West Asia. As the tensions soar between Israel and Iran, we are breaking down the real questions. Is this a proxy war or could it turn into a direct confrontation? What's Israel's next move? Are their target going to be Iran's nuclear or oil facilities? We'll discuss not just the military maneuvers but the strategic, political and human dimensions of this conflict. Both our guests brings unique perspectives. General Roy, with his operational background, sheds light on the ground realities and the limitations of a high-tech warfare. Colonel Agarwal, on the other hand, with his expertise in West Asia, delves into Iran's strategic responses, its capabilities and the broader geopolitical ripple effect, including the stance of US, Russia and China. This episode isn't just about the current situation, it's about understanding historical tensions, the possible outcomes, and understand what lessons India and the world should take from this conflict. Can diplomacy win, or will military escalation push this region to a breaking point? Get ready for a conversation that goes beyond headlines, bringing you the expertise of two veterans with unmatched insights into the complexities of West Asia. Without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into today's conversation, I just wanted to take a quick moment. We looked at our analytics and noticed that 93% of you who watch our videos regularly aren't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying our content and want us to keep going with more insightful conversation, we'd really appreciate if you could take just a second to subscribe. It might seem like a small action, but it goes a long way in helping us grow and bringing even more amazing content your way. Thanks for your support. It means the world to us. Now let's get back. To begin with, sir, there is a possibility of Israel's attack on Iran now. What, according to you, should Israel target at the moment, sir? They have three options. They've got the oil refineries. They can either attack infrastructure or their nuclear developments. So first to you, where do you think they will attack and why?
Shivam, if we really go by the theoretical presumptions, then Israel has been trying to destroy the nuclear facilities of Iran for a long, long time. It was wanting to look for an excuse. That excuse exists as of now. But as a pragmatic approach to the entire conflict, the way it has evolved itself in the last 1 year, if you really ask me, that may not be the good option for them to adopt. And the basic reason is that when we look at the direct conflict between Israel and Iran, which appears to be almost happening, is being now existing in a form of a proxy war. And Iran has very effectively developed the proxies, which make the Israelis' land borders quite insecure. No war in the past has ever been won by high-tech attack of drones, missile, and rockets. Ultimate victory is achieved by the foot soldiers on the ground. And there, to me, as a military man, Israel is appearing to be weak. Whereas the proxies of Iran, without Iran getting threatened, it can support the proxies pretty well. And they can be more effective against Israel in any kind of a ground warfare. As regards the attack on the other installation in Iran is concerned, that too will be quite a daunting task for Israel by sheer distance that exists between Iran and Israel. So to me, it appears that right now this conflict is heading towards not a very realistic conclusion, if we may really call it. It may be a bit premature to conclude it as of now. But there is still a time for both the sides to wait and watch. And to that an extent, this, what is going on right now, the best example of the proxies getting involved in this war is the one that I think will continue for some more time. The rest is up to Rajeev to say.
What I understood by Sir was Sir saying that Israel would be focusing on the military of Iran. Do you agree with that, sir?
So Shivam, this is a very, what I would call a very critical inflection point in this war. It is already more than 1 year. And the Iran's attack of 1st October, the ballistic missile attack, has not only put Israel in a tight spot, because Iran has successfully penetrated the defenses of Israel and US combined, and has hit effectively some of the military target that it had targeted. But it has also put a question mark on now Israel, what it should do to retaliate, and retaliate in a manner in which it is effective, it is deterrent, and it does not blow out into uncontrolled escalation, which thereafter it is beyond anybody's control. So what you have talked of are the three kinetic options: the military installations, the nuclear sites, or the oil facilities. If Israel had to take any of these, kinetic options, we know how Israel is very prompt in retaliating to any threat, because the whole principle of its nationhood, it is based on a concept which is called peace through security. Right. Now, when a nation's nationhood and existence is based on a principle of peace through security, it will not normally wait for weeks and fortnights and months before it takes a retaliatory action. So this tells you immediately that it is in a fix on what to do as far as the retaliation is concerned. It does not have the option, to my mind, of not retaliating, because that would send a signal which is irretrievable for Israel in the future, and especially for the leadership, Prime Minister Netanyahu, etc. Now, so the question is, what does it do? As General Roy said, nuclear is not on the table, as I see.
Out of bounds.
I would not say out of bounds, but not on the table because of the various repercussions it can bring about, as also the fact that it is not a secret at all that both Israel and the US and others have tried their best to see, even in the past, how Iran's nuclear installations could be taken out. But it is practically not a very feasible option, because the way their critical nuclear facilities are configured deep into the mountains in deflated positions where even the ballistic missiles cannot reach with their trajectory, etc. So that is the thing. Now, what does Israel do? So to my mind, the wargaming that is going on in Israel is this, that if we do not strike nuclear facility, if we do not strike oil facility, will a strike on some military installations or facilities count as a effective retaliation? Secondly, will this, like in April, bring the tit for tat strikes to a close, and then we move on with business as usual in the war? Or will any military strike, even on a military installation, invite a much larger retaliation from Iran, and after that, like I said earlier, it'll become an uncontrolled escalation? So this is the whole wargaming which is going on right now in Israel. Otherwise, if it was simple, 1st October Iranians attacked, by third, fourth, fifth, sixth, Israel would have done its job and got its fighters back. The second important point is again what General Rameshwar said. Israel and Iran are separated by almost 1,700 to 2,000 kilometers. Right. None of the aircrafts has the operating capability of more than 14 to 1,500 kilometers, whether it is F-16 or otherwise. That means you have to have refueling done this thing with weapon platforms on board. Secondly, Jordan, Syria, all these airspaces are out of bound, as at least theoretically, because they have said, although Jordan has permitted earlier Israel to use the airspace despite the fact that it had said that it is out of bound. But if it actually is out of bounds, then what route does Israel take to reach Iran?
Ballistic missiles?
No. Ballistic missiles, yes, but the ballistic missiles is the only field in the military asymmetric equation that exists between Israel and Iran, where Israel is inferior to Iran. Iran has got a much wider, more potent range of ballistic missile systems than what Israel has. Israel has very, very superior air force. Israel has very superior air defense systems. But when it comes to ballistic missiles, whether it is Jericho 1 or Jericho 3 missiles that they have, their ranges are 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers, which can reach Iran, but they are not as potent as the variety and array of missiles that Iran has in its weaponry. And mind you, today none of us know that Iran has actually demonstrated all its capabilities in missile technology on its 1st October attack. They may have many, many more hidden gems in their weaponry, which are yet to be revealed to the world.
And Shivam, let's also look at the other aspect, for the long term, you require a capacity to absorb the destruction. You require economy to sustain the rebuilding process after the destruction. To my mind, in both these counts, if we take out the American assistance to Israel, on both these counts, I think Iran has a better capacity to sustain the effort for much longer period than Israel, directly or with the help of the proxies. Even if you go back on that Iran-Iraq war, which went on for many years, Iran has shown that capability, that how much capacity it has to absorb the destruction and mayhem that gets created. And then, should it Israel attack the nuclear facility, the oil facilities of Iran, it has worldwide fallouts on the economy.
Yes.
That is also one of the deterrents which will prevent it from doing so. So my take is supporting what Rajeev has said, that at best it can go in for some calibrated kind of a response, which will aim for military installations. But by default, as it always happens, that it will also by default put this destruction in some of the civilian facilities or civilian places with the civilian casualties. What that puts a pressure on the nation itself or the leadership of the nation, where the civil population gets hurt, then the pressure comes on the leadership of the country. So that could be the option that could be there. And my take on this is at least till November. And should we say that?
Right. Sir briefly mentioned is Iran and Iraq. I've noticed post the war with Iran and Iraq, Iran has been refraining itself to be in a direct conflict, has been doing a lot of proxies. What are your thoughts on the proxy war that's against Israel at the moment?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, till I think 13th or 14th April, when Iran undertook the first barrage of drones and missile attack on Israel, that was the first time after 1988 that Iran got itself involved in a direct military conflict with weapons or weapon platforms, taking off from its own soil. So Iran has maintained a very, very clear and stated policy of not getting involved in any direct conflict. And whenever there's a discussion on conflicts in West Asia, I have always emphasized on this, that yes, Iran has got its proxies, Iran has got its allies, Iran has supported what it calls resistance groups as a part of its axis of resistance. That is a part of its national policy, national security policy, stated policy, whatever you call it. But Iran has never got involved in a direct military conflict before this. Right. So what has it done? Like General Rameshwar was saying, it has got an asymmetric advantage vis-a-vis Israel. Whereas Israel has got nuisance value all along its borders, fueled, funded, equipped, ideologically attuned by Iran.
Right.
There's nothing that Israel has got on Iran's borders. So Iran is sitting far away and is able to do with its proxies maximum damage with minimum cost as far as Israel is concerned. And that has been its policy for so many years. It has developed these allies or groups or proxies over these decades because of this. And it has been one of the most successful models.
Right. So your thoughts on the proxies?
You see, even when we look at it ethically, Palestine has been on the world map prior to existence of Israel.
Yes.
And today's dichotomous situation is that the very UNO article which permits creation of Israel, giving them almost about 57% of land or 50% of land of Palestinians for their existence, they are being taken as irrelevant, and Israel is not listening to any of the UN mediations. And whereas the Palestinians, if I remember it correctly, have they been driven into a very small corner of around 5-10% of land. So morally and ethically also, when we look at the proxies in the region of this other nations in this region, that is Syria, you have Yemen, you got Lebanon, not much to speak about, but they are the Iraq. All these nations, as far as when they look at it, naturally their hearts and souls would be with Palestinians, not with Israel. So this axis of resistance is here to stay much longer, and they would be able to draw their strength from, as is being taken now from Iran. It's almost the same way as Israel is also drawing most of its strength from US. Yes. Do we say then this entire conflict is a battle of proxies? And in that, if we try to just take the balance sheet of the proxies, there we may find Israel at a slightly disadvantage. I think it has gone in for the conflict for the right reason, but I think it has been pushing it for a bit too far. And now even the world opinion, when you really read whatever reports are coming in, whatever aid is pouring into Palestine, that apart, the people now have started feeling this, that the destruction carried out by Israel in self-defense, quote unquote self-defense, has gone a bit too far. And it's time that, to my mind, they should start looking for an honorable exit or honorable halt to this entire process. And in one of the earlier debates, I had mentioned that none of these resistance groups or the Hamas and Hezbollahs can be finished off forever.
Right.
Because this is more to do with the human psyche, which cannot be destroyed. You can destroy the weapons, infrastructure, the number of people involved in it you can kill, but what about the coming generations? They will grow up with these stories. So you cannot finish off such groups, really speaking. And therefore, I think it's time that they accept a pragmatic solution for this and put a halt to this, going for an honorable exit from this crisis. Because in many ways now it is turning out to be a very senseless kind of a conflict, causing destruction on both the sides with the likelihood of expansion of this conflict.
With what Sir said, he is suggesting a two-state solution, sir. But every time there's been a talks of two-state solution, the extremists have been against the solution. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
So I'll take off from where General Rameshwar said. The problem today in this war is not of ceasefire. Ceasefire can happen tomorrow. It can happen day after. But the issue to be seen is, will this ceasefire resolve the problem for which the war started? If you want a solution, you have to know the problem. Problem is that all these groups have been fighting Israel because Israel has encroached upon the land which was given to it in 1947-48 by the UN resolution. By and by. And therefore, when we talk of a two-state solution, my first question in any discussion is, the two-state says one of the principles in that is viable. When you do not have any land left on either side for the Palestinians to stay, how do you have a viable state? Can you have a viable state of a Gaza and West Bank, which is separated by so much of territory of Israel in between, that it can be viable? And this brings us to the question that how whether what General Rameshwar was saying of honorable exit can happen tomorrow. Ceasefire can happen tomorrow. Will it solve the problem? The answer is no. Now, the problem to two-state solution today is not only of the land and the viability of a state, but also the principled stand taken by Israel. Israel in the month of July has passed a resolution in its parliament rejecting a two-state solution. It has been always said by many of its leaders, even its prime ministers in the past. But for the parliament to pass a resolution saying that we do not accept any two-state solution, that means you are taking things too far. And that is precisely what has happened in this war. If you go deeper into it, that yes, the 7th October Hamas terror attack took place. There is no question about it. It was a terror attack. It was one of the most horrendous terror attacks that could have taken place, where women, children, and every other people were brutalized. And Israel had the full right to retaliate, its right to defense and right to protect. The entire world was with Israel, and entire world was denouncing Hamas and calling out Iran for supporting Hamas and everything. If you recall 1 year back, what happened? Why did it change? What General Rameshwar said, the narrative changed. Narrative changed because after the initial onslaught, where Hamas was targeted and brought down, cadres eliminated, Israel in exuberance took such indiscriminate routes to the battle that hospitals, schools, all these facilities were bombed. Mass casualties took place, which were seen visually by the entire world. A uniformed army could not have, should not have undertaken this thing, even if the plea was that Hamas is using these hospitals and schools and centers as hiding places and taking shelter of, taking them as shield to hide. That is, so what? A professional army has to find way around it. And that way cannot be by brutalizing anything and everything that comes in the way. That is where Israel lost the narrative. Right. Had Israel stuck to its task as a military force of hunting down Hamas, they have got the most extensive and most effective intelligence network in the world. They have shown it with the Pages attack on Hezbollah on 17th September. Right. But in exuberance, they overreached. The second thing, also what I would like to say, and I think that is what has happened with the senior leadership and the war cabinet in Israel, is that they have thought that let us do it once and for all. Now that this situation is upon us, let us finish this problem once and for all. So let us finish off Gaza, so there's no Hamas threat forever. On 27th August, they entered West Bank with tanks and everything, and they have almost overrun everything that was there in West Bank. And then they said, okay, let us also stop this nonsense from Hezbollah, that all our northern settlers keep facing a barrage of rockets here and there all year round. Even before the Gaza war, rocket attacks were sporadic, but they were always a nuisance. So I think that is also one of the things that went out in Israel, that let us end this nuisance once and for all, however long it takes or whatever price we have to pay.
But that would never end, like Sir suggests. So Sir is saying that how Israel responded and retaliated was unethical. If you were to make a decision on what the response would have been for Israel, what would that be for you?
No, I think Rajeev said that when they started the response in self-defense and taking the Hamas terrorist attack to swords, that was correct one. Absolutely. They started rightly.
No, but it transformed
when you push
it to
anything too far. Even when we study the various templates of conflicts and wars, they have been existing ever since the dawn of civilization. In fact, one of the quotations famously says that the human conflicts have caused more destruction and loss of lives than the natural calamities, when we really go by the statistics. But the fact of the matter is that when the diplomatic failure happens, the military might takes over between two adversaries. But when the military might also steams runs out or the other party is submitted to subjugation, then once again you go back to table, you come back to diplomacy. To say or to legitimate it by saying that you passed a resolution in the parliament. Parliament is not something, a resolution which is passed on a stone. I mean, that can always change, or that can the mandate can change. The fact of the matter is you have to accept the ground realities. By presuming that just because the land has been captured, you have subjugated the people who belong to, who were staying on that land, and they've been pushed to some other land. It is only changes the that geographical divide. It doesn't change the sentiments and the realities on the ground. So there is, I forget the name of the writer, Prisoners of Geography, that tells you how the state boundaries come about. So the demographic pressures that exist on these boundaries, they will always be there regardless of whether the boundary is here today or it is a couple of kilometers behind. The basic issue here is that the Palestinians or the other countries around it, wherever these people have now shifted or pushed into, can never forget that there was a land which was theirs, on which they were existing, much the same way as Israel now feels after they were given this land and brought in to settle here. And they are now claiming the ownership of this. There is a party which is claiming the ownership of it since 1947-48, and there is a party which has lost the ownership of land which belonged to them. Yeah. Let's look at that more rationally, if we call ourselves as the rational human beings, and then look for a political solution of this entire process. Unless that happens, we are only giving more and more time between the conflicts, and conflicts will continue. And how do you know it will not happen that in days to come, the other party gets more strong, the other party gets more empowered, other party has more destructive power than the present Israel? How do you know that these things won't happen? Because these realities again keep changing on the ground. So in times to come, we are only keeping this problem, we are giving it a larger connotation as it erupts again after I don't know how many years, whether we are dead or alive to see this. Therefore, like it has happened earlier also in many of these conflicts, that the international community fails us again and again. Yes. It has happened in Ukraine, Russia. It has happened when terrorism was, as I speak, world over. Global war on terrorism started. Time and again, the international community has to come together to pull the two warring factions and to get them see the rationality of this whole process. If that is not happening, then we will continue to get subjected to these kind of conflicts and these kind of upheavals in our existence. And this is the way I like to say that it's the international community together. As of now, it's just war of words, statements coming from here and there. People have no stakes. They're not involved in it, but they don't understand that tomorrow when the economy sinks, when oil facilities get destroyed, then they'll start feeling the pinch. And then the whole process will be too late to retrieve thereafter. So I think the community has to come together to see some sense in this, work out an honorable exit for both. And Israel also has to see the reality that, look, you have been made to exist 47, 48 onwards. And here is a country that was on the map and you're wanting to obliterate it. How unrealistic is that? And will the history or will the coming generations really be able to get this right? So let's put things right now before it's too late. It's already too late, in fact. But some effort has to be made by the international community. UNO as of now has been made irrelevant. That we have seen enough of it.
It is banned in Israel.
The very UNO which created them has been banned. That itself is a very, very unreasonable kind of a situation. So this is all that one would like to say.
So adding to what Sir mentioned about that war doesn't get you any solution, but do you think that goes against the US's understanding of war? Because what benefits is the military-industrial complex, which is governed in the US as well. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Yes, I mean, US military-industrial complex will always benefit, whether it's the war in Ukraine or whether it's an ongoing war in Gaza. that is one of the parts, and that's a very big driving point as far as U.S. policy making in the back end is concerned, not the front that we see in the public face, but just to support the military industrial complex to thrive and to get orders, you cannot have destruction of humanity, which is the live views that we are getting from the region in Gaza. So people have to sit down. Military wars never bring about a solution. Military wars only bring you to a point where the warring parties can be then brought together and work out a solution diplomatically and through dialogue. You cannot get a solution by a military victory or a military positioning. You can use the military and its war and its strategy to bring you to a point of a favorable situation. But even if you are in a favorable situation, after that, the dialogue and diplomacy has to take over and then bring overall resolution to the crisis. And this, I again come back to the same point. Ceasefire can happen tomorrow, but will it solve the problem? This is what we have to ask ourselves.
Right. So dialogue and diplomacy is something that Israel needs to learn from India. But what is something that we should learn from this conflict that is happening in West Asia at the moment? So what is India's learning from these conflicts? So to you first.
India has been in this business of fighting terrorism ever since our existence. In fact, we were born out of it in a way, because September, October 1947 itself, Pakistan with the Razakars, Pakistan Army had attacked the state of J&K. And thereafter, various groups were formed. Northeast has been on the boil ever since. Basic issue is that in any kind of warfare, once the anger gets out, you have to see the rational and you have to come back to what is called compassion. Here also, in a way, the start was with a lot of anger. The Israeli psyche was hurt that they thought that we are, our intelligence and our everything their pride was hurt. Much the same way, I'll now try to compare it with when the Twin Towers in USA were hit by those aircraft bombs. The American pride or psyche was hurt. Yes. So America responded by bombing Afghanistan to Stone Age, saying that the guys, Al-Qaeda originated there and they were living there and they were having shelters there. A similar kind of a anger was there, visible with Israelis when they responded to this terrorist attack which took them off guard, despite the best of the intelligence that they have. So to my mind, at that point of time, even if they acted in anger, because their national pride was hurt, which at least one could see very clearly, there is a rationality which must dawn on them to see the realities on the ground. Unless you see the realities on the ground, only by anger, nothing will be solved. Only by force, nothing will be solved. That is how we have very famously believed that diplomatic failure will result into war, initiation of war. But war again ends only when the diplomatic efforts once again take over and restore. What we have learned in our battle for insurgency or battle against the terrorism in Northeast as well as J&K is that we have controlled it to the point where a civil administration becomes functional. And thereafter, the election process takes over and you have the civil administration in place. And we forget about any kind of killings or any kind of brutalities, any kind of injustice which was done during the time when we were fighting the terrorism. And that is ample examples are there, all these states. And you can see that by and by, peace has dawned in much of these states. Although the big difference is there that as far as our fighting these insurgents or the terrorists is concerned, they've been our own people. In case of Israel, that is not the case. But some analogy can always be there because the actions taken by Hamas and Hezbollah have been on the lines of creating terror in the state called Israel. And Israel has responded to react to that situation. So this is what I would say, that there is always, after anger and after these fights, compassion must take over, because humanity exists because of that. And larger picture must be seen this way. If you say that today's, we are living as a global community, then globalization, if it is being spoken of, then it has to be seen in that perspective, rather than, saying that only a particular state exists and others have no right to exist at all. That will be my take on this.
Right. So India can be seen as a mediator for conflict resolution. We've been seeing in the war in Russia and Ukraine, we were acting like a person for dialogue as well. What do you think our role is in West Asia? What kind of perceptions does West Asia has on India that we would have the liberty to be as a peacemaker there?
So I'll just come to the peacemaker point in a moment. I'll just say the 2-3 issues on what India could learn, which you asked General Rameshwar. So to me, there are 3 specific and absolutely bulleted points on what India can learn from this conflict. Firstly is, when you have adversary on your border who is out to make mischief, you cannot be complacent in your intelligence and operational preparedness. Point number 1. Point number 2, your military objective and your political objectives have to be so precise and achievable. The targets or the objectives that Israel set for itself, their own politicians, ministers, and generals have said are unachievable. Can you eliminate Hamas? Sarah said you cannot. Can you bomb Gaza, flatten out Gaza? They have been trying for 11 months, still Hamas is firing back. So your military and political objectives have to be very precise, so that you can see and achieve them. And that has been the success of Israel in the past. Since 2007, when Hamas took over the governance in Gaza, starting from the first conflict operation Cast Lead in 2009, their operations have been very swift and precise. 7 days in and out. You target the mischief makers, take them out, come back to the borders and secure it. This time, they lost sight of that because of anger issue that Sir said. So complacency cannot be there, precise this thing. And third is that you have to be very careful on how you conduct operations. Indiscriminate operations resulting in indiscriminate collateral damage will never be accepted by anyone who's watching it from the sidelines. So these are 3 very precise lessons that I think can be taken as far as India is concerned. Coming to your question of India as a peacemaker, see, there's a very clear principle in India's foreign policy, that is non-interference in intra-regional issues and conflict. The conflict in West Asia is an intra-regional issue. India is the only country in the world today which enjoys maximum trust and goodwill among both the parties, whether it is the Hamas, Hezbollah, Axis of Resistance, Iran, or Israel. When you say US, it is seen to be siding with Israel. When you see the other countries who are negotiating ceasefire, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, they all seem to be siding with the Palestinians or the Palestinian cause or the Axis of Resistance. Saudi Arabia and UAE have conveniently kept themselves on the sidelines throughout the war. So there is only one country which is accepted in case it has got some role. But to my mind, India does not have any role other than getting messages across or trying to tell what PM Modi also said about few days back to Netanyahu, that de-escalation should be the principle, indiscriminate killings should be avoided. More than that, a peacemaker role in the current context, I don't see for India in this conflict.
When we speak about West Asia and the conflicts in West Asia, it's not a recent situation. It's been happening for a long time. It's a historical significance now. But there's a lot of religious sentiments also in West Asia. There's a divide between one, of course, Shia and Sunni. What are your take on the fact that how this conflict is primarily a religious conflict between Jews and the Muslims?
I don't think that is the situation, or that is the way one would like to look at right now. Although very famously Huntington wrote about the clash of civilizations, But these are no such this thing happening here, because when we look at it realistically, going back in time, the origin of three religions the from this land: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. So from that point of view, there is no dividing line here on this religious kind of a conflict. It is the existentialism, of the people who existed later, those who existed before that. One is trying to eliminate the other. And acceptance has to come both ways. The Palestinians have to exist that once this land has been allotted, given in whichever form, whichever way it has been done by the international community or the UN, whatever understanding is there, to the Israel has a right to exist in those boundaries, that land allotted to them for times to come.
Right.
Israel also must understand that whatever understanding was given at the beginning of their existence to the people who existed before here, they also have to exist. Now, once the existence of both these is accepted, the issue is that I don't think there is a religious connotation to this. Although one can, from a point of view, say this, that between Shias and Sunnis, there are groups which are supported by Iran, because Iran is a Shia group. Therefore, it supports the Shias. They may be in Syria, they may be in Iraq, they may be in Yemen, they may be in Beirut, wherever. And the other party is Sunnis, which basically the leadership of Sunni group or Sunni is, let's say, it's very difficult to actually put down these divisions in this manner. But the understanding, the way one reads in the press is, say, Saudi Arabia for that matter, that they are the ones who are essentially a Sunni country, and therefore they would support the Sunni cause. But in larger perspective, when we see the existence of Palestine per se, then I don't think that this Shia-Sunni divide will be taken as these two together against the Jews. I don't think it's a religious kind of conflict. This is the way I look at it. Maybe some people can have.
No, but Jews believe that, the Muslims have an ideology of finishing the Jews. Is that the right mindset, sir?
No, I don't think. I agree with General Rameshwar. It is more of an issue of territory and right to existence, both for Israel as well as for Palestine. Don't think for a moment that Israel does not fear for its rights of existence. It has got adversaries on all sides of its border, a very, very small nation, vulnerable from all sides. So you have to understand the psyche of Israel when I say that it is governed by the principle of peace through security, because it has got no other option. So to me, it is not so much, you can't compartmentalize into a religious issue as such. It is more about an issue of territory and right to existence for both the parties.
What I've understood from geopolitics is, sir, that it's all about narratives. There are different narratives to picture situations. There's one narrative that I'm going to throw at you, if you tell me if you want to clarify that as well, that, of course, when we talk about geopolitics, China's involvement is omnipresent. Some of us say that China is trying to push a war in West Asia through Iran to keep US at bay. Would you like to answer that, sir?
You see, generally these things are not pushed in the manner that narratives may be floating around, but it is not actually that way. These are power blocks. The power blocks is that for some time when the Russia's breakup, USSR breakup, we took it as the sole superpower as the US, till China started asserting itself to say that no, I also exist. Now, as we look at it, I would say loosely speaking again, because there cannot be very common binding forces for power blocks, that Russia, China put it along with, as if they're backing Iran for all the ventures that Iran is trying to do or is doing against Israel, and America is backing Israel. The situation has come about in that manner, that they have to ultimately, physically, morally, or in material terms, have to support one group or the other. It's like a conflict in a world that people will fall with one party or the other. Like last war, big war, Second World War, same thing happened. Many of the nations which were found on this side or that side, they were not the willing people, but they were just caught by the situation. You have to be either this side or that side. Here also, for the bigger existence of these nations, they have to be in the conflict with Iran. They have to, every person is trying to have more and more countries under their influence. So Iran with its proxies will give them the greater influence in this particular area. We know for sure that all this has also come about because of the gap created by exit of US. US was at one point of time was very much interested in West Asia or East Asia, whichever way one wants to call it. West Asia, till such time they had the stakes, they were the controlling group, then these kind of conflicts would have taken a different connotation altogether. Now that the power vacuum is there, everybody would pitch in to fill up that power vacuum. So it is that kind of a situation, but it's very simplistic to say that if one nation can be pushed into conflict to give leverage to the some nations against the other, it doesn't happen. I mean, it can happen in a street fight, right, but not at globally. These things generally don't happen like this. It is just the power vacuum and influence you want to increase. Definitely, one is seeing an opportunity, one will like to increase them.
China is trying to be a superpower, and that's what US is. You would like to put US down. What are your thoughts on that, sir? Do you think China's involvement in West Asia is real?
See, China, being one of the big powers of the world today, does not have the option of being a neutral power. Okay, so the question is not about whether China is siding or doing something in this war. It is what is the scale and scope of what China can do, and China's focus and strategy is very clear. They do not get involved in anything militarily, because their focus is only driven by economic progress. So even today, you can say 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, when they have achieved that scale of strength, economic and military, that they may venture out to do something. I am no China expert. I don't study China in detail, but I'm just talking in general terms. Yeah. So what I understand, China, it does not have any direct role in this conflict, but by compulsion of being a world power, it does not have the soft option of being totally neutral also.
Right. So another narrative that is running around is that Benjamin Netanyahu's political instability in Israel has been the situation as well, and that is why he's trying to fuel the war to sustain his power. Do you agree with that, sir?
Yes, this is also one of the narratives. In fact, people are trying to put this as one of the main reasons as to why he's gone far too right. He's gone far too right. And but that has a limited reach. Even the Israelis themselves have now started feeling that even if he pushed it for his own power or for his own bigger nationalist than anybody else who's been the leader of Israel, people are now feeling the pinch, and therefore that narrative seems to be now mellowing down. That same reason that he's pushed it too far, and now it's going to hurt the Israelis much more than economically also, and they will take long time to recover the losses that they're suffering now, and the ultimate burden, as we know, that comes back on public only. The public will not be too happy only to serve the interest of one individual or small group of individuals. And I think that narrative is getting lost now. Even if that could have been the reason how and why it all started, I don't think that is going to be now spoken of in this manner.
So your thought on this?
Yes, I mean, you have to understand that Prime Minister Netanyahu was under unprecedented pressure when the Hamas terror attack took place. I mean, he had to...
Before that as well? Before that, there was a lot of political instability in Israel?
No, there was there. But I mean, that was there, that was existing. So Hamas terror attack did not take place because Netanyahu was under pressure domestically because of judicial reforms or whatever were happening. So, what I am trying to say is Hamas terror attack took place, point of fact. No Prime Minister of Israel had faced this kind of a situation ever. You add the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu is one of the most aggressive Prime Ministers that Israel has had, and a vocal proponent of a principle that he does not support a two-state solution. When you add everything, the political, upheaval that was going in Israel before the Hamas terror attack, the terror attack itself, and then the personality of Netanyahu, his thought on the two-state solution. So when you add everything, it gives you a complete picture on how and why he has reacted the way he has. The only thing that has happened wrong is he took it too far.
There's always an involvement of the United States in any conflict, sirs. There is, and even in this war, US has been seen as the big brother of Israel. US has been trying to consult, I would say is the right word, to Israel in order to where the attack should be. Coming back to the attack, where the first question was, sir. But Israel never listens to US, if that's something I could say. Would you think that US has suggested Israel to attack its military operations? But do you think Israel is someone who always listens to the United States?
No, I don't think that these kind of strategies are worked out by anybody outside than the nation which are involved with the war. Israelis would have worked out their targets and where to attack, where not to attack. And I do not know much as can be seen from the narratives that the US has, Joe Biden has told him not to attack the nuclear facilities and things like that. I don't think any nation is capable of dictating the other nation as to what targets to pick up and how far to go or how far not to go, despite the fact that no matter how strong influence you can have, because it's ultimately the nations at war which are suffering. So I don't think there's any such dictation which can come from outside, or the fighting nations have any kind of a mandate to listen to these kind of things. So this could be just the news or the stories. I don't give much credence to all this.
So if Israel will attack the oil refineries of Iran, what would be the next scenario then, sir, according to you? Where would you see this war heading towards?
To me, attack on oil installations will be a huge ladder towards escalation on two counts. One is the count of the war, that oil installations is a red line that Iran has said very clearly. So it will have to retaliate, and then retaliation, counter retaliation goes on. The second thing is what we do not discuss often in our discussions is Iran is the only country which has got almost monopoly on control over the passage of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. If you recall, in 2019 June, when Iran has shot down a US drone over its airspace, Donald Trump was the president that time. He had ordered an airstrike and he pulled off that airstrike, I think minutes or hour before the launch of the airstrike. Why was that? Because that would have been an escalation, and the Strait of Hormuz is the fact that Iran can close the Strait of Hormuz is almost like a weapon that Iran has. Imagine two things if they happen: the oil installations in and around Iran and oil installations in and around Israel and others in the region are taken out, plus the Strait of Hormuz is closed. IMEC is still not through. What is the alternate? Red Sea is already closed. Right. How does the oil go through? Today it is $70 or $72. It may turn to $100, $120, $140, $200. The whole world economy will be in a jeopardy. It will no longer remain a localized conflict, whether kinetic or otherwise. Oil prices is a big red line for the entire world economy. So this is a fact which is understood by the US. It is known to them, and in the past they have also tried. Somehow that Strait of Hormuz should be beyond the capability of Iran to close. Geographically, it is not possible. Iran has that kind of presence and control. So we have to remember this, that oil installations will be a huge ladder of escalation, whether you like it or not.
What about a scenario of the nuclear infrastructure being attacked by Israel?
We already ruled out one by the sheer whatever damage they can cause or they cannot cause, and then Iran has indicated enough that do not think that world has been suspecting for a long time that they don't have nuclear capability. But the way things are in today's world, all these kind of stockpiles are floating anywhere and everywhere. A long time back, I read the book that Fifth Horseman, in which they talk of this nuclear weapon having been taken over by some terrorist group. And that possibility is more real as of now than it would have been 40, 50 years back when this book was written. So I don't think that could be a possibility that we should look at. If the very fact that even the attack on the oil installation is going to be a huge escalatory ladder, you can imagine nuclear exchange. And in fact, now is the right time for the world to start thinking and looking at, is the nuclear deterrence really working or not working? In the light of even the Ukraine-Russia, many times the Russians threatened, but then nothing happened. And it cannot happen actually, because you see the population density in this part of the globe is such that one cannot really think of that kind of a disastrous, mutually assured destruction option at all. Even in Second World War, it was ending. It was thought of towards the islands of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which is too far away from the main conflict zone. Even if that would not have been bombed, they wanted to try it out, the effect of this. I'm sure the war was in the ending phase in any case, but they could try it out only because it was too far away from their own mainland. Right. And to build up such a scenario here in Iran, I don't think it could be just a discussion point. Otherwise, I don't see it happening at all. Rajeev, if you have any views on this. Absolutely.
Quick two more points, sir. One is that you closely study West Asia. Is there a situation of civil unrest in Iran if something happens with the military base there?
Because civil unrest, any nation and every nation has some kind of domestic issues which are going on. Iran has been witnessing and been the center of a number of civil rights issues, whether it's the hijab issue or curbing the rights of women, etc. But one thing I can say is, from whatever I have read and seen about Iran, that whenever Iran has been under threat as a nation, the people have generally rallied around the regime.
Okay.
So that kind of thing is there in Iran. So you put them under pressure. You cannot name any other country in the world which has sustained the most severe kind of economic sanctions for last 40 years and has still sustained and survived and progressed. Iran is now producing 3.2 million barrels and exporting oil and everything despite the sanctions. So people have, to my mind, generally rallied around whenever Iran has faced the threat as a nation.
So, but you mentioned that this war would end with the elections in the US. What do you think it would end with, sir?
No, I don't think one can make that kind of a sweeping statement that the war will end with elections. What may happen is that the tone and texture or intensity of this entire conflict is likely to get revised. This is my assessment. I could be totally wrong also. After the US elections, because whichever leadership, we all know that the joystick of this entire conflict from the Israel side is at least to a great extent with the US. So I would take it that whether the Democrats come to power or Republicans, we don't know. Depending upon which government comes to power, the tone and texture of this entire conflict will take a switch. Whichever way it goes, it's difficult to assess right now, because the political statements which are coming out from both the sides as of now towards this conflict and what will actually happen when depending upon which party comes to power, will be totally different. But definitely I would expect that there would be a revision of the entire process, for good or for bad, after the US elections. And I would be very optimistic to say that it should be towards good, for an honorable exit, as we keep saying, for both the sides. In fact, more for the Israelis than the other side is totally sort of not talking about it at all. And that's the way it is. That's the only statement one can make as of now, but it will stop. No, that will be too much of a sweeping statement to make. Some kind of a moderation one way or the other is likely to happen.
Any closing words from you, sir?
Absolutely. I mean, the conflict is at a very, very dangerous state. It could go berserk, or it could mellow down after the elections, like Sir has said. So we only hope that better sense prevails.
Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us in this beautiful conversation. I took a lot of insights and learning from both of you as experts, and I'm sure the audience did as well.
Thank you, Shiva.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Shiva.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Shiva.
Shiva.
Thank you.
We at TOAP are working really hard to take this podcast to the next level. Our guests are going to get even better, our production quality is going to get even better, and hopefully, I'm going to get even better too. Most importantly, we are committed to being consistent and continue to do what we love the most. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you. Jai Hind.